With us, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sharon, if you're in the back, can you come out? All right, so I have to have a mea culpa. This summer was crazy. It was the end of my term on the CTA board, moving home, doing all that kind of stuff. I wanted to make sure we honored Harry. So I went out, we made sure we got something for him, ordered stuff. It didn't come in. I got stuff. I left it in Wairika. I got stuff. It was in Sacramento, but I couldn't find it in my bedroom at my sister's house. So, Harry. Because Harry's leaving, we got to get this done now. Thank you so much for the time that you were our chair. And it might be, they might not let you on a plane with it. So Danielle might have to ship it. I am from Northern California.
Meditation tapes? Oh, thanks, Dana.
Everybody wrote on the card, but if anybody has anything they want to say, we'll leave it open. Okay, you got to open it. Yes.
Yeah, we want to.
I'm trying to teach my daughters that it's
So you can tell how
it's much better to give than it is to receive. So, in chairing the board, you guys gave me so much more than I gave the organization. It was a high honor. You guys are wonderful. It's a true gift to know everybody. Beautiful, nice apple, right? Reminder of the roots. Being a teacher, where it all began, trying to make a difference with teachers and kids. Absolutely. And then you wind up at the CalSTRS board. So it's amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. There's something else in here, Dana? This will be nice. Let's share this with my daughters. This
it's a plaque to set it on.
Oh, beautiful. That's nice. So put this in the, my girls and I, we moved. We have a nice mantle with a fireplace and everything. It's be wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. Now I know you're up to be here in a minute, so. That's twice today. Alrighty, Robin, financial statement review, please.
Do my thing later.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, but as you're coming up, Tom did have something he wanted to add to a future agenda, maybe our work plan, so I'm going to let him talk about that now before he leaves. So Tom, go ahead and, since he won't be here for that part of the agenda.
Right. Well, I sort of spoke to it yesterday, but I think I just wanted to be complete as to a way to make our approach to what we euphemistically call ESG issues kind of holistic. As you heard yesterday in the investment committee, I felt pretty strongly that we should narrow its focus on those issues to things that materially affect investment returns. And on the other hand, I feel very strongly that we should be addressing these issues more broadly and probably after last week more strongly than before. So I'd like to propose that those categories of ESG type issues that are not directly material to our investment returns be transferred to the purview of the governance committee, so that it can address programs or issues in that way. And I could see it leading to increased activism on the governance front on issues that are less traditional for us. I can see it being a more effective forum for some of the contractor and other issues, but I'd like the governance committee to consider that Or maybe it's the whole board that would consider that splitting of the program.
Review, calling for question it. Does anyone have any issues with us putting that on the agenda and whatever venue that Jack and I talk about, whatever venue's best for it? Whether that's the board governance or if it's the board or
it could be a new committee. I mean, that which would be fine too.
Any, Paul?
No, that was just my question was, so we're going to consider it at a few, yeah, and I think, I mean, whether it's board governance or a corporate governance committee, but.
Would this be appropriate to discuss at the February offsite, the full board discussing and where we think it's best, it would fit best?
Let Jack and I'll take a look at it, have a conversation, and maybe bring back a suggestion. We can let you know what that is in February. How's that?
Thank you.
All right, Jack, we have some walk-on orders. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, great. And yeah, and if you want to talk
Okay.
about that somewhere.
That might be already. Thanks. Travel safely. Happy Thanksgiving. All righty, Robin.
Thank you very much. So I'm here with our senior manager over financial reporting, Lucy Arbuckle, and we've prepared a presentation that really highlights the content of our financial statement. Those of you who were a part of the ARM committee yesterday got the overview from our auditors in terms of the results of their audit. And this presentation is really focused on the contents of the statements and tries to provide you with financial highlights from those statements. I also really want to acknowledge for you and for the audience the level of effort and commitment by the entire organization to producing these statements. Communications certainly has assisted us with formatting and making them a seamless part of the CAFR. We had support from benefits and services and investments and legal staff and actuarial staff, people throughout the organization in terms of producing these statements. We also have a wonderful staff who spent hours and hours getting these ready and reviewed and presented to the auditors. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucy.
Well, Robin stole my introduction, so
sorry.
I'm just going to skip to the agenda. So today we're just going to present to you the financial highlights of our financial statements as of June 30, 2016. We picked a few balances which we deemed are significant based on the dollar amounts at year end. We're also going to show you key year-over-year comparisons and ratios of those balances. We're also going to talk about some of the things that we've accomplished during the year, and that included the downgrade of the significant deficiency to a deficiency, which was discussed yesterday at the ARM committee. And then last but not the least, we're just going to talk about new GASB standards that were implemented that will impact our financial statements this year and the year after that. So this slide is a snapshot of our statement of fiduciary net position for the STRIP, or the State Teachers Retirement Plan. This is also known as the balance sheet. This statement shows our assets, our liabilities, which are mostly short-term, except for our share of the state of California's net pension liability. And this also shows the net position at the end of the year. And as you can see, the net position went down by about 1.4% at June 30, 2016, and that's primarily because of the market performance as of June 30, 2016. Before I go into this slide, I just wanted to clarify that this numbers are based on financial statement numbers. They're not, this includes accruals and really not based on amounts, based on how we handle the portfolio. Accruals really are estimates, and it is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so what that really entails is that we report our revenue and our receivables and or expenses and liabilities as we've earned or incurred them, and not when it actually occurred. So as you can see from the previous slide, our investment assets went down by about 1.5%. But if you look at these slides, the costs remain consistent year over year. So if you look at debt securities, equity securities, and alternative investments, but the fluctuation really is in the unrealized or accumulated unrealized gains or losses from year over year. This is just the three main asset classes in our financial statements. This is not the complete population, but this made up about 90% of our whole investment assets. So to refresh your memory, in fiscal year 13-14, GASB implemented statement number 67, which impacted pension financial reporting for plans. And then in the next fiscal year, GASB implemented statement 68, which impacted the pension financial reporting for the employers. So this slide right here is the GASB 67 number, which is not reported in CalSTAR's financial statements, but reported in our employers' financial statements. As you can see, our net pension liability went up because our TPL, our total pension liability went up, and then our planned fiduciary net position went down. Our TPL went up due to certain factors like service costs went up, interest costs went up, and our investment income went down, which is used to offset those costs. So that's the GASB 67 number. And this is the GASB 68 number. As you can see, the GASB 68 number also went up in the current fiscal year. It actually went up by about 22%. This is the one where we recorded in our books as a debit to pension expense, increase in pension expense and increase in our net pension liability. Consistent with what we're seeing in our valuation, we also noticed that their service costs went up, their interest costs went up, and their net investment income went down as well. I'm sorry, but I need to go back and at least explain. I know some of you might be confused between, well, what's the difference between my NPL and my unfunded actuarial obligation? So NPL, they both came from the same valuation report. They're both based on the same June 30, 2015 valuation report. But for the NPL, our actuaries updated they did a roll forward procedures to update the results to our reporting period of June 30, 2016. In addition, they also have this different discount rate. The funding uses a 7.5 discount rate, but my NPL uses a 7.6% because it's gross of admin expenses as mandated by GASB. And then another difference too is, although they both use this asset smoothing method, the NPL uses a 5-year amortization period, whereas the UAO uses a 3-year amortization period. So going to, so we're done with the balance sheet. We're now going to the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, which is also known as the income statement. So in this statement, you can see that the major components of this statement really is contributions, net investment income, benefit payments, and admin expenses. And this is a snapshot of our membership and a comparison of the membership numbers between this year and last year. Across the board, they went up by an average of about 2%. Why is this slide here? Because the movement of membership really, it does factor into the movement of my planned net position at the end of the year. As you can see, my active members went up by 2%. Retirees, it's about 2% as well. And this is the breakdown of the contributions. The percentage inside the bar is the contribution rates in effect between this year and last year. And the numbers on top of the bars are the contribution revenue that we've earned and recorded in our income statement as of June 30, 2016. Okay. So investment returns. When GASB 67 was implemented, we were required to present the money-weighted rate of return, which is different from the time-weighted rate of return in that the money-weighted rate of return considers the timing of cash flows into the calculation, meaning the contribution that comes in and the benefit payments that go out. In addition to that, the fees that are used in the calculation of money-weighted return are as reported in our financial statements, meaning some of them may be capitalized and not considered as expenses at all. This is the breakdown of the investment income in our income statement or statement of changes in fiduciary net position. As you can see, interest income, dividends, other income, relatively stable year over year. The fluctuation really is in unrealized appreciation and depreciation and realized gains and losses. I know this looks familiar, this looks similar to David's slide, but this is looking back and not looking forward. And then as you can see, our contributions started going up starting 2015. That is when AB 1469, Assembly Bill 1469 was implemented, and it slightly narrowed the gap between the benefit payments and the contributions. this information is from our other supplementary information in the financial statements, and I think we have that in the ARM material. As you can see, investment expenses remained relatively stable year over year. Admin expenses went up this year. Some of the reasons why it went up is our share of the state of California's net pension liability. We actually booked almost 19 million in higher in pension expense from the state of California. And in addition to that, we have a lot of projects going on in this building. Two of them are the audiovisual refresh project and the space optimization project. I'm going too fast. Any questions so far? Okay. So accomplishments, consistent with last year, and I know you've heard this from our auditors last year, we received an unmodified opinion, and our significant deficiency was downgraded to a deficiency. It's really, really good because it means our internal controls are stronger than last year, and it will keep getting stronger every year. In addition, we received our GFOA award for financial reporting excellence based on our last year's CAFR. And like Robin has mentioned, we have also used an InDesign software to prepare our financial statements. It's significantly better than Microsoft Word and Excel, which is what we've been using in the past. And in my opinion, it's a good-looking set of financial statements. And also, I know this has been highlighted yesterday in the ARM committee, but we did successfully implement GASB 72. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that one, but it really just expanded the disclosure of the investments. No change in the bottom line. This was a smooth transition because, you know, thanks to Chris, Deborah, and Michelle's team for really helping us and being patient and understanding the need for the year-end reporting process. I don't know if everyone is aware that, you know, to prepare a financial statements, it's technically taking 1 year's worth of transactions, turning it into a 70-plus page document, not counting the 30-plus page document that we prepared to assist our employers in implementing GASB 68. Between that and 3 layers of review, it took us about 4 weeks to get that together to submit it to our auditors, and we were on time. In addition to that, we have another 4 weeks of making sure that whatever Crow had requested, we are able to respond back right away to be able to be on time with getting the audit opinion. I'd like to say thanks to my team, but I think they've left. I know there's a couple of managers in the back that are there, but we couldn't have done this without them. You know, they work tirelessly. They have lots of overtime, but I can guarantee you there was no tension, no friction. Everyone really was just there smiling and working. It really takes a lot of dedication for people to be able to get this done. And this work product is not just accounting. Like Robin had mentioned, this is CalSTRS. It's one CalSTRS. It's everyone putting the effort together to make this happen.
Fabulous.
Yes,
Fabulous.
I think so too.
You guys did
That's why I love this organization.
Thank you, Lucy.
You're welcome. Well, you know, so I need more patience from people. You know, I want to talk about what's coming up. This financial statements this year, we're going to implement GASB 74. So consistent with 67 and 68, this now applies to our other post-employment benefits, which is our Medicare premium payment program. So we're currently in the process of writing up policies, learning about the Medicare premium program, and how do we want to implement it in our financial statements. So there's more to come. I know we're going to come back in February or April to present assumptions for OPEB.
Okay.
We'll keep you guys posted. And then the year after that, we're going to implement GASB 75, which is us as an employer, and also our school districts. And I think that's what I have.
We will be reporting what their OPEBs are? Is that what the 75 is?
So one of the things that has benefited us in the implementation of GASB 67, 68 was having to perform the same calculations ourselves. So in jargon, we talk about eating our own dog food.
Right.
So we had to do that with GASB 68. So we had to apply the same the same standards to our own financial statements, which was a contributor to the increase in administrative expenses. So we will do the same thing with the OPEB obligation for our staff that will come from CalPERS.
Oh, okay.
So that's
It's
other.
not, it's not our district, it's not
No,
our employers,
but-
it's the employer.
But this year, we will deploy the information for our employers related to our OPEB plan, which is limited to the Medicare premium payment plan.
Right.
And the policy decisions that Lucy was talking about is we have to, because it's a cost-sharing plan, we have to come up with policies for allocating those liabilities. So that's what we're working on this year.
Any other questions? Robin, Lucy, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And did they really come in at 6? Michelle said they come in at 6 in the morning. Are they coming in? Yeah. All righty. Paul.
And we talked about this yesterday at ARM, but it was mentioned that we have no material weaknesses. We have no significant deficiencies. We have some deficiencies, but that gives us much greater confidence that we're going to identify any problems in the financial information, and it's not going to get by and get incorporated into our financial statements. So it was a tremendous effort. Crow is kind of a difficult taskmaster, and yet I think staff and Robin and Cassandra, who's not here now, in particular, deserve a lot of credit for it. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that. That's been kind of something that we've been hearing about every year, but staff has been working, day in, day out on, and it's a great accomplishment. So thank you and congratulations.
Right, Joycelyn, it's your turn. Look, Grant's here too.
So, given the late hour, I'll keep my comments brief, but I just had to say that part of the joy of being here the last few weeks is getting to know the staff behind the people that you usually see at the dais. And Joycelyn's team in governmental relations is no exception. It's a really great group, bright people, and interesting people as well. Let me just start by saying that today Joycelyn is going to give a roundup of what happened at the end of the legislative session, and then also present for your consideration a proposal to change the legislative policy in a way that would allow staff to be more nimble in terms of taking positions on bills in between meetings. And I think it could be really important, especially at the beginning of the legislative session when it's really important and you can be effective in terms of getting on bills that you want to support or bills that might need our opposition or our suggested amendments. It's easier to be effective more early on. And I think given to the extent that you are considering or have already considered changing the meeting schedule that you have, I think that proposal could be even more important for you to consider. But with that, I'll turn it over to Joycelyn.
Great. Thank you, Grant. Good afternoon. Good to see
Afternoon.
everyone. I wanted to update you on 3 bills that the governor acted on after the last time I presented to you in September to let you know what happened with those. The first one is a sponsored bill, AB 736, regarding putting the chief operating officer and the chief financial officer under the authority of the board, and that bill was signed. So that was a success for us. There were 2 other bills that the board had neutral positions on. The first is AB 1875, and that had to do with allowing members to elect special needs trusts as option and annuity beneficiaries instead of just allowing a person. That bill was signed as well, so that is now, or starting January 1st, will be an option for our members and participants. And the last bill to mention is AB 2155, which had to do with part-time adult education instructors. And that bill was actually vetoed, and it had to do with specifying which instructors were adult education instructors, something that I believe can be done under current law, but that clarification and specification won't be going into the law this time. So those are the 3 updates there.
Before you move
Yes.
on, I have a question.
Yes.
Are the veto messages for bills attached to the bills on the website at the Capitol?
They are on the Ledge Info site. I
Okay.
believe they're now listed under the history.
Right.
or the status, I think.
And so we ought to be able to find the veto
Yes.
message and be attached. Okay, great, thank you.
Definitely. I also wanted to update you on the one semi-substantive proposal that we've been considering for this next year. It's related to the excess funds report for the SBMA that you looked at in June, and the board had wanted us to pursue having that report done at least every 4 years instead of every 2 years when the projection is available. So it's something we're continuing to work on with our constituent groups and stakeholders, and we're also trying to see if we can consider placing that in our housekeeping bill this year going forward, but we are still working on that, so I'll come back with another update in the future.
All right.
Questions on that?
Nope, I don't have anybody in line.
Okay. Then Grant, I think, did a fabulous job introducing the potential updates to the board legislative policy, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but I laid out in the board item the process that we go through in the Capitol and here at CalSTRS for analyzing legislation. And given the timing of board meetings, oftentimes bills have already made it through the first half of the process before you're able to see them and take a position on them. And I think that really limits our ability to get our message out there. We can provide factual information and data, but the consultants, the constituent groups, and the stakeholders, and the members for that matter, really do, I think, appreciate having an actual formal position taken. And this item presents a couple different options, but the one we're looking at is delegating the decision on a position in accordance with the policy and the guidelines that are there to the chair and vice chair when there isn't an upcoming meeting. So the bills would come in, we would look at them, the program areas would analyze them, we would get that analysis out, and then we would look to the chair and vice chair for potentially taking a position. And that will definitely be helpful as the committee hearings start up in March and April, and then move very quickly from there. There's another piece to this that we're looking at doing, is coming back to you in potentially April with some other changes, including adding a definition in the definitions of the positions, the support recommend amendments. It's a discussion that came up earlier this year, and also some other changes just to clarify the positions and to add guidelines where there seem to be some missing or that need clarification so that we can take more solid positions, which then go on to inform actually at the chief executive level whether or not we recommend veto or signature to the governor. Questions on that?
So this is listed as an informational item?
Yes.
You're just asking our direction to move forward and draft policy? Are you asking us actually to make this decision today?
It would be helpful to have a decision made today on the delegation piece.
And Brian, if it's listed as informational, can we do that?
Of course. My concern is you don't have any, unless I'm not reading it correctly, do you have the actual language in front of you?
No, we
The
don't.
revision to the policy.
Well, they're not gonna do the policy revisions, it's only the delegation part.
Right, isn't the delegation in addition to the policy?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it'd be a one sentence thing in the charter or something, but yeah, that's why we didn't want to do the policy things today, for sure. They need a little more construction and discussion. The question is whether, as they
To
enter.
delegate the authority.
Yes,
we would put it
well,
in.
I'm not sure I know the temperature, but as they are about to enter into the legislative environment, because it would be April before we came back with anything more. Just really checking your interest or not, we don't know.
So it is checking our interest, not necessarily voting to do the delegation.
No, and doing that if you felt comfortable with it, yeah.
Okay.
That was the question. We just didn't know where you were with it, with this issue. Yeah.
Okay. Eric?
But just on the delegation part, the policy stuff we would bring back in April for
Also,
sure.
we'll bring back in April.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the delegation makes a ton of sense given the legislative cycle and our board schedule. One thing I was a little curious about is the extent to which the board could be notified whenever that policy would be enacted. I know there's Bagley Keene to consider, but I think it could be helpful to at least be aware of if a bill is drastically changed or if a bill is introduced that requires the delegated authority to be used, to just kind of be aware of it.
Brian?
I think we could do something.
I'm sorry, that, if it's a one-way communication, we don't have a Bagley Keene issue.
Yeah, and we could do that immediately after the chair and vice
So
chair
we
have
can
made
say
the
it's been
decision.
triggered, the decision's been made, this is what it is, and send it out?
Right.
And the rationale? Okay. Lim? Eric, were you done? Lim?
Thank you. Given the timeline that you laid out, and we are sensitive to the timelines, but would all legislation then fall under this rubric? Because if we're not having the meetings in alignment with the legislative session, how does that work?
It's possible that several bills might fall under this, but I think that they're, given the time that it takes to analyze legislation, that if there is a meeting in April, there would still be bills coming to you then. Or March, I don't know what the potential timeline is that you might be considering. And also, it depends on when bills are gutted and amended, that it's possible we'd get that analyzed and be able to get it into a board packet for you.
Because I guess our concern is, most bills, I would imagine that we would have unanimous agreement on what the position should be, but there are those instances when we don't. So is there a process that you have in mind where the vice chair and chair could take a position and then it comes back to the board and the position is switched?
That's a possibility to consider. So,
because on behalf of the controller, that's one of our main concerns with this proposal. And I think this isn't up for discussion today, and I understand you can bring revisions back in April. But the whole concept of when the board votes to take a position of support if amended, and then under the policy, the decision is delegated to the CEO, which puts the CEO in a strange position if those amendments are not made to determine whether or not the board's position is actually support or oppose. And we would like to have a further discussion about that in April.
about the veto and signature recommendation, or about whether or not the decision comes back to the
Well, preferably both, but definitely about the support if amended. I think that's.
and which direction we would go, depending on the amendments.
We find that difficult one to deal with.
Right.
Because nothing's ever done 100%. Yeah, that's a struggle for us, that one.
It is difficult, but I'm also curious, has there ever been a precedent of, if you properly notice a conference call meeting, just to consider these items on legislation, if it comes down to that and a couple of bills? Is that possible, Brian?
Well, in the past, we did have a legislative committee, and that was something that we did have off-cycle a couple of times. It still had the logistical pinnings of a full board meeting, and I believe almost every member of the board did sit on the committee. And so with the notice and having staff all there and having the room available and recording it and all of that, all of those pieces.
Yeah, the one thing you mentioned, Lynn, I wouldn't recommend, if you don't mind me saying, is the reaffirmation of if you delegate, for these interims, I think you should be comfortable with the delegation, but if you do a reaffirmation, I think they lose credibility with the position of the Capitol. I wouldn't find that comfortable if I went over and said, the board currently supports this, and then I say, oh no, they changed, now the full board met and they don't support it. I think you'd want to be crisp in your decisions around that, in my mind.
And I can certainly appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there's a process so that we could all weigh in before the chair and vice chair are asked to make a decision, because that's kind of an uncomfortable position for them. We certainly don't want to violate Bagley-Keene with a serial meeting, having to check in with every board member, excuse me.
But I think the only way that we avoid Bagley-Keene is if it's publicly noticed, it's an open meeting. And so conference calls, if we were to do a conference call, the whole board, everybody's location would have to be disclosed.
It's quite difficult.
But I totally understand.
Right.
I totally understand.
Yeah, we see.
I mean, we talked about.
This is not one of these, it's nice, but it's not critical. Obviously, life has gone on this way.
And this is a whole conversation Ed and I had when he first started thinking about how to be more nimble. I think it's a tough one for the board.
And I will say, having sat in one of those two spots, I know exactly where you're coming from. But I would just want to emphasize, Joycelyn said it before, stakeholders have been asking for this as well, just so that we can join earlier with them on a position on a bill, but understand where you're sitting.
Absolutely. Paul?
So two things. Jack, I didn't understand the distinction between delegating the board today, doing the delegation, but not doing changing the policy. Isn't the change in policy the concept of delegating to the chair and vice chair?
Yeah, I was differentiating the policy being the substantive components of your policy that need to be talked about. Those I thought that are mentioned here at the end of the item, we would do in April. We wanted just surface issues with you today. But delegation is, but I was trying to differentiate from substantive issues.
But you're saying, and Brian is saying that we can make a decision today to going forward delegate.
Yes. Okay. I was encouraging you to defer the other issues on there till April when we talk about them more, the substantive stuff about, especially the support of amended. That's so confusing. I think we want to talk about that in April and the other things.
I mean, I'm generally okay with this, but I do have concerns because I do think there have been some, important issues that we have had a lot of discussion at this board about, and it does seem to me that a way to deal with that, and vesting the sensitivity on these issues to the chair and vice chair, is to call a special meeting or call a special meeting where the locations are the service centers. So I can go to Santa Clara if I want to participate, and people in LA can go to Glendale, and Nora can go to San Diego. I mean, we now have service centers pretty close to where most of us, and I think that can work, but I think there would have to be some sensitivity that, recognizing this might be an issue that the full board might want to know about, and then we go to, but I like the idea of coming up with a way to act more quickly. But I think, if we find that the board feels like its prerogative is really being, taken away because of the way, we can always change the policy again, right? So.
Well, instead of making, so this is what I'm going to propose, and Lynn, I'm jumping in here ahead of you. Because we have 4 members of the board gone, and we have one that definitely has reservations and one that possibly has reservations, I would like to hold this until maybe if we could throw it, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time on our February meeting, but all of us should be there in February. I don't know if it would take very long to have this item on the agenda, but could we put it on the February agenda, Jack? Would everybody that would need to be there would be there, right? Grant will be there and he could propose it. All right. I think I'd rather have a fuller discussion about it, seeing that someone's raised some concerns. Brian?
I would just add, I think there was an outstanding question by Lynn about meeting. There is a specific provision in Bagley-Keene that allows for a special meeting to discuss legislation. So that is a shorter notice period.
Oh, there's a shorter notice time? Not because right now it's 48 hours?
That is 48 hours, but it fits within that special meeting. That 48-hour meeting can only be for certain things, and legislation is specifically included.
Okay, so what's the normal timeline on Bagley-Keene?
10-day notice.
10 days, okay, 10 days and then 48 hours.
48 hours.
All right.
At least 48 hours is the special.
Because I think we would need to be more nimble than 10 days.
Right.
48 hours could possibly work. All right, Lynn, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I appreciate you looking that up so quickly. And I think that's a great suggestion, Dana, to take this up in February.
All righty. Joycelyn, thank you very much. Thank you. Grant? Woohoo, first one down. Many more to come. Hopefully we will be done by 6. All righty. We have our project risk oversight, so if we could have Graham and John come forward? Or do we do it, we do it at the same time, don't we? Yeah, sure. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Graham Finley with Grant Thornton, here to give our regular independent oversight report. In recognition of the time, as well as,
They're actually electronic, they change.
oh, they do. I did not even know that.
They're digital.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a computer thing.
I'm impressed. Technology. Wow.
Name's misspelled.
Don't
touch.
I can't, that's 6 seconds actually.
Wow.
Do you believe in magic?
All right. Yeah. So in recognition of the time, I am going to limit my verbal comments just to 2 main points, and then I'll free to take as many questions as you would like to ask. So the 2 points I want to highlight on the pension solution project. If you remember when we last spoke in September, I think it was, the project and Team CGI were going back and forth on establishing a schedule for the implementation of Functional Release 1, and they were discussing what was a realistic milestone, the resourcing associated with that, and exactly what scope would be in which functional release. The good news is those conversations are substantially complete, at least at a conceptual level. There's an agreement on what the implementation date will be for Functional Release 1, as well as the scope associated with each of the functional releases. The issue is it's not finalized completely as yet. There are a couple of contractual change requests that need to be signed before that decision is final, if you like. Those have not been done. Because there's a general understanding of what the date is going to be, the project team has a way to move forward because they know sort of where they're going, but there's still a certain degree of uncertainty because it's not final until those change requests get finalized. So we recommend that the project finalize those change requests as a matter of priority. That's item 1.
We have a question about item 1.
Okay.
What is the new date? Is the specific date?
There is a date, and actually the project sponsors are going to be covering that during their presentation, but it's basically pushing out the originally planned date by a number of months, but they're going to be covering that. Okay. So the second point is related to the first, that once the change request assigned and phase 2, which is the requirements confirmation and conceptual design, is officially complete, and there's a defined scope, schedule, and budget associated with the implementation of Functional Release 1, that's going to enable the project to create what we would refer to as a performance management baseline. And what we mean by that is that up until now, there hasn't really been a basis for the board to evaluate whether the project has really been progressing according to schedule and burning money according to a plan that's going to get the project to a set of milestones within the approved budget, because there hasn't been that set of milestones defined. And it's not that the project's been doing anything wrong, it's just they've been going through a discovery process and understanding exactly what the scope of the project is, what's going to be in each functional release, how long it's going to take, and what the resources are going to need to be. At least through Functional Release 1, which is going to be over a year from now, that will no longer be the case. There will be a defined scope, schedule, and budget. So that provides you and us on your behalf the ability to monitor performance over time so you can evaluate just how well the project is actually progressing against the plan and ideally make some predictions about the likelihood that the project will be able to make dates and that the budget that is being expended is consistent with the assumptions that were made when the budget was being prepared. So you're going to see from us a significant focus on that in our future reports. We'll continue to monitor significant risks and as we have been doing, but we're also going to be taking a look at performance against the baselines and providing that as part of our monthly report to you. So with that, I'll cut short my verbal comments. Any questions? Okay. I'll pass it over to John.
Good afternoon. I have to recognize that my name was misspelled originally when I sat down, and while I was sitting here, my name is now spelled correctly. I want to thank my CalSTRS team behind me. It's also, as Graham mentioned, in the interest of time, I'll make my comments brief. Very excited to be here presenting the results of our most recent IV&V review for the project. Let's see if I have this right, like that. Okay. So overall, I have a few slides. I'll move through them relatively quickly. Overall, the project is at a medium risk. This is the same place it was 2 months ago. And again, this is not unusual, is certainly understandable. if I were to make 2 points, I think my first point would be the things that are going well. There's a lot of very good work going on in the project. The CalSTRS team and the CGI team and their subcontractor Sagitech are working extremely hard. They're working extremely well together. The first 3 bullets there under things that are going well are all very technical aspects of the project. And I think it's a credit to both of the teams and all the people in the project, the work that's been going on. The last 2 bullets, on the things that are going well, this is a quality management area. It's one of the things that we as an IV&V have been bringing up for months. And I think the project team has been very responsive, looking at our recommendations, adapting some of our recommendations, and making a lot of good progress in the area of quality management. And as a IV&V vendor, and I know Graham as a QA, this is near and dear to our heart. So a lot of good progress has been going on. There's been a lot of other things that obviously don't make the slide, not the least of which was a major system demonstration actually in this room a month or 2 ago. And I think the room was full, and we did a quick review of people who had, some of the user community who could see the system in action. And it was all very positive. Also, some of the executives actually went to Missouri recently to see 2 or 3 different implementations of the product, and they're all, again, got very good responses, very good positive reviews. So if I were to make 2 points, I think that would be my first one. Yes, ma'am.
It can wait till the end.
You sure? Okay. You sure? Oh, I'm gonna have you. Go back. Okay. Drive on. Okay. Oh. All right. So that's the good news. There's always concerns, IV&V and QA, we always try to point out things that could go better. And this, my second point would be very similar to Graham's. There are 2 contractual change requests that absolutely have to get through the process. Some of them have been outstanding for 3 or 4 months, and that's an issue. It gets to, I know the name of the slide is project management, but I think of it as project management and governance. It's how are decisions being made? How long do people wrangle with decisions? Because the project suffers, as Graham mentioned, with the uncertainty around some of these fundamental changes to the schedule. And I know that Ashish, I think, is going to talk a little more about that after we're done. But that is the number one challenge for the project right now. It's the uncertainty. It's the fact that the project's actually managing to 2 schedules at the moment, one with and one without the change requests. And so there's just angst and anxiety and issues like that come up in that regard. The second bullet on the findings, is resources. This is one of the things that's very linked to the change requests. There's been tremendous progress on managing the resources required for the project, and that bullet will probably go away off our slides once the 2 change requests are approved. So the schedule changes that are being talked about, they're very significant, and they're going to be significantly reduce the risk of the project in regard to the resources that are available. So with that, my next slide are some of the mitigations. I've already talked about these, but executives are meeting, I think, on a daily basis at the highest levels of CalSTRS and the highest levels of CGI to try to get to closure. It's absolutely critical that that happen. And then the project is making lots of other improvements and around project allocation of resources and some of the quality management things that I mentioned. Second area of concern is quality management. This is one of the ones, this is actually a high risk on our most recent report, but I think on the next report that you see, this will actually be going down to a medium risk. There have been that many, I think, very significant improvements in the quality process, the quality of the deliverables from CGI standpoint, in the review process that the CalSTRS team is using to review those deliverables. So there's been very good progress here. The progress is summarized. And again, this is all in your packet. Obviously, there's a lot more details available. And then finally, I want to touch on some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the future. We're obviously going to continue to do our status and IV&V review of all the key aspects of the project. Forrester was brought in to do a quality assurance plan, quality management plan, so we're anxious to look at that and see how to help advise the CalSTRS project implementation. And we're also going to do a review of the offsite development facility in Pune. It's where some of the software development work is being done on the CGI Sagitech team. And so we're going to go as an IVNV team and take a look at the processes, the procedures, the controls. We're going to do the interviews. We're going to witness how they manage communication back with the developers here, for example, and how they manage risks, how they manage the project, so that we can give you a full view of the project.
I just want to, the scope of that review will also include their cybersecurity, their information security.
Yes.
Thank you.
And what system is using this in India?
The actual, the facility that Sagitech uses to maintain the transfer package that CGI is using to implement here is done in Pune. So they're kind of the base development group for the solution.
Got it. Thanks. Are you finished?
Yes, I'm all.
Okay. Eric, somehow I lost you. There you go.
My request, kind of in the interest of time, but I'll just go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
But I was just kind of curious from your perspective, given the fact that as far as I know, we don't quite have the technical expertise that you and Graham and CGI have, what kind of questions we should be asking you and Graham and the folks at CGI just to kind of fulfill our oversight role and whatever that is.
Sure. I'll give an answer and then I'll refer to Graham as well. I think one of the most important things you can do, and this is going to sound a little bit self-serving, but the most important thing I think that you can do is have an independent reviewer involved. Projects are very important, especially to the people running the projects. The vendors are committed to the success of the project. CalSTRS is obviously very committed. So I think if there's one thing you can do, you can have an independent party who's going to give you the clean, unadulterated, fact-based, 360-degree view of what's really going on. So honestly, I think that's the most important thing. And then if there's areas of concern, if there's areas that you are worried about from things you read or things you hear, then pass it along to us and we'll dig into it for you.
If I was going to add anything, I would just suggest that focus on outcomes, because it's so easy to get sucked into the day-to-day stuff, and it's easy for us to do that as well. And I think it's good at this level to be thinking, it's not just about, budget and schedule and so on, but what are the benefits? Like, why are we doing this project at all? And are the things that's going to come out of this project still the things that we thought we were going to get, when it was approved? And keep an eye on that to see whether it's still, a good use of CalSTRS funds.
All righty, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. So taking a look at our agenda, that was, we have a couple, our information item, we didn't have anything referred to as, I'm sorry, come up, Andrew. I skipped right over 12, right after they said you guys were going to be coming up. Andrew and Ashish, come on up.
But they are excited to see you.
You have 15 minutes. No, you're good.
And 10. So first of all, thank you. I know you all. Okay. So whenever Graham and John came here, provide the stoplight, yellow, plus, minus, red, we thought that maybe we'll provide you quarterly, at least 3 times, the update from our side, what's going on, what we did, what we're doing, what is the next step. So Andrew and I will go over this quickly next 10 minutes, not 15 minutes, and then we'll field some question. I think I heard some question came out, so maybe we'll go from there. Okay. So in the interest of time, I will move quickly through this presentation. This slide just speaks to the requirements confirmation being largely complete, design sessions to flesh out those requirements and add detail necessary, again, largely completed for the first functional release and are underway for the second functional release.
Development, conversion, and test environments are all underway as well. This slide demonstrates to you what kind of functionality you will get, we will get in each one of the functional rollouts. I won't bother repeating what you're seeing on the slides. However, just know that the first functional release is a smaller percentage of the overall functionality, and that gives CalSTRS and Team CGI an opportunity to go through conversion, testing, and training phases in preparation for the second functional rollout, which contains the lion's share of functionality in the entire system. And that will take place sometime well over a year after the first functional rollout. And then the third functional rollout will take place most likely a little bit less than a year after the second functional rollout, and contains, again, a smaller percentage of the overall functionality.
So go back.
Yeah.
So this one, I think the question you asked, Arena, that is what is the new date? So when CGI put together a proposal at that time in June last year, they proposed September 2017. And at the time, they just know like 80%, 90% of our requirement, and there's some 10% we had to go back and forth. So this time, I think we are saying this is our baseline schedule. Now moving forward, we will, just like Graham mentioned, that we will put some anchor down what is the March 2018 and how we are progressing. Can we achieve that one? Then we will report that one. This is our baseline schedule at this moment.
So can I make a comment? I think that this addresses the resource allocation that IB&B had, Maximus had discussed in their risk, that this one has a fully resourced achievable schedule plan associated with it, which is 6 months in the first rollout, 7 months in the second rollout, and 6 months in the third rollout, which just pushes it 6 months farther than the original high-level schedule that had been contemplated.
Yeah, thank you, Cassandra. So this one is also, you heard that there are a couple of CRs pending, which we are working with CGI. So the negotiation we're going on, that how this 6 month, 7 month, and 6 month will get the achievable schedule from both sides.
And not to belabor, but just to be clear, the 6 month, 7 month, and 6 month shift is an overall 6 month impact to the very end date of the project. That's not cumulative. There's just a 1 6 month push. And in terms of the key activities and decisions, again, you can see these on the slide. Just to note that we are conducting significant outreach with employers through a number of different forums, and working again through design and looking to verify workflow and associated processes internally, and also reviewing and mitigating inconsistent business practices that we've identified as a result of these practices. For this slide, we're going to just quickly speak to the governance structure that we currently have with the project. I'm going to call out a few names. We have several of the senior team members who have stayed to witness the presentation. The organizational structure as depicted shows the various layers of project management, with the sponsors and the steering committee responsible for guiding the overall approach. The steering committee recently transitioned to a new chair, Melissa Adams, supported by Vice Chair Prashant Mittal, and is now working to refine project governance. The 3 boxes below that, project management, business transformation, and quality, each represent a work stream that is supported by a team of people focused on associated tasks. Project management includes critical path activities like conversion and testing. The CalSTRS project manager, Randy Doyle, is supported by Deputy Project Manager, Ana Leaño. Yeah. And they're all here, so let's have them stand up.
Yeah, they still have a tie on, you know.
All day. We've also got our business lead, Jennifer Spangler, technical lead, Nirupam Basroy, along with dozens of other hardworking team members. Business transformation, which is led by Director Jeff Zimmer. Include change management, process transition, and training resources, demonstrating our organizational commitment to the people responsible for making the new system successful. Quality management is the current focus of intense effort, as you've heard from IB&B and Grant Thornton, to put greater emphasis on successful review cycles for deliverables. Corey Lockett is our CalSTRS quality lead responsible for building out the overall program. This is the team that stayed. Thank you all very much for your hard work.
So I just want to maybe emphasize a little bit. You just see the project sponsor, Andrew and Ashish here, but behind the scene, Robin and Cassandra, even Lisa and Jack, I think we are meeting every other day or weekly, round table and all. So it's a lot of support they are provided to us.
This slide is just to demonstrate the number of CalSTRS staff that we have working on this project. There are a number of folks in all the different business areas in CalSTRS, whether directly or indirectly, who are spending a lot of time and energy to make the pension solution effort successful.
So that looks like about 1 out of 4 or something.
Yeah, 1/3.
These are all our employees, these aren't outside contractors.
Correct, these are
reps.
all CalSTRS staff. These do not include the contractors.
If you look about 1 out of 4 employees that works here.
Right, so this is a very critical, very big enterprise-wide effort. And if you go to the 5th floor, if you will go anytime, you will see the people in the benches, you will see in the huddle in the corner, and you will be amazed to see that how much energy and effort they are putting day in, day out. Maybe we just take over all the conferences room in the 16th floor,
Yep. And then this is just to kind of give you a high-level overview of the pension solution project budget. Early on into the project, spending is slightly below what was anticipated for this point in time. Moving forward, Ashish and I are going to continue to provide updated figures along with projections for future expenditures to give you full insight into the project budget.
So this is the area, you heard a lot about from IPOC and IBNB that the risk and issues. So at this moment, we thought that these are the lesson learned, whatever the lesson learned from all the big project, what the failure rate in there and which phase they are failed of the project. So at this moment, we are very much focused on these 4 areas. We'll add a couple of more as soon as we progress in different cycle of the project. Data conversion, I think you heard from data prep. I think we started 4 years back. I think that effort is now, we are realizing how much effort is go through there, that when we will convert the data, we can trust the data. So it's so much quality, and I think we are saying, even we're trying our best, it's not 100% fixed, but it still is whatever is possible. I think we provided so much policy and direction to the staff, and they came up small nick in there that, okay, this is not how we can do this, data worth is not there, kind of. The quality management you heard, I think this is another area which we have started the project in this mind that we have a quality first, and we are just held accountable for the team as well as CGI and our team. So what we did, we recently engaged the third party, the Forrester. They came, they did the workshop, and they gave us the overall program, how we will manage that one. And that is independent from the project. They will reporting directly to, Corey will report directly to us. The resources in the big project is always, always challenging. We are juggling down. Sometimes the skill set is not there. Sometimes we have, because this is a big project, it's a 5 years project, sometimes people burn out. So we are looking how we can maintain the continuity. Do we have a primary or do we have a backup? So we're looking from that angle also. The business process change, and as you know that with the new system, what we were doing so far in the start and all, there's a big change for our end user community. How we will do now, Jeff is in leading that effort, and we are putting some support to Jeff, how we will manage what we are doing currently now, and how we will doing a little better in the future.
So moving on to the next steps. In the coming month, the project team will focus on training, change management, design, conversion, and testing. As our employers are the first group to go in terms of the functional rollouts, CalSTRS is embarking on an effort to coordinate training for some 2,200 unique users Training that many users in a state as large as California will require a strategic effort to deploy in-person training whenever possible, supported by quality, effective computer-based training modules. Change management has shifted to the Business Transformation Division to connect it more closely to the business areas. Design sessions for the second functional release are underway, and preparation has begun for testing activities in functional rollout 1. And finally, the last of the next steps, as we move closer toward implementation, CalSTRS is limiting enhancements to its existing legacy system START to focus limited resources on critical activities. Legislative changes are likewise receiving a higher level of scrutiny so that the system only focuses on what's absolutely necessary to provide a more stable environment for the legacy system and allow for the new system to be implemented and stabilized prior to go live. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I don't see anybody in line. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all of you staying after 5 o'clock and being introduced and standing up and waving. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
All righty. We didn't have any items referred by the committees to board decisions. Jennifer, I just want to make sure we have what we were, the items that were referred for possibly, research. So we had Tom's request to find a home for non-material ESG issues. And that was something that we were hoping that we could present to the board in February. We've also put off till February the decision about delegation on the legislative issues. And then also sort of legislation to deal with vendors on school property. Is that all that you have? I captured that.
I'm sorry, I have one item to add. We were requested by the Treasurer's Office to research a particular issue that we would normally discuss in closed session, but it's a follow-up to a very detailed conversation I had with Mr. Rosensteel regarding the Loyalton situation that CalPERS is dealing with. And
the what situation?
The Loyalton situation.
Yes.
So that implicates
people withdrawing from the system.
Yeah. So the possible implications on our system, and Mr. Rosensteel asked some very.
I think that's a very good idea.
And then Mr. Lawyer asked some additional questions. So we'd like to do some real. Robin and I like to do some real research and bring it back to you in closed session.
Absolutely, I thought that might become part of the charter school report, but I think. Yeah, it's a timely matter, so I think that's good.
And that's the permutation to what Mr. Rosensteel was asking.
Yeah, the Loyalton issue is at best. All right, so draft agenda for the next committee meeting. Do we have anything you want to talk about, Jack?
Well, just wanted, so this is a very different meeting. It started out as an offsite structure and kind of morphed into a little of both. So I just want to make sure this is a go for everybody here that's left standing. We're starting out the item with the two authors of the book. What do they do with your money? This was a book had suggested by Harry. We're buying copies of the book for everyone as well. So you'll have that ahead of time. So that'll be I assume an hour or a bit more. Ann's arranged for 2 of the 3 authors to be with you in San Diego. And then we'll move into obviously a very hearty item for the rest of the morning, the actuarial experience study, which I assume will take a couple hours. And then the afternoon was meant to be your legislative update, which we bounced from this meeting. It would have been interesting to hear that right after the national election, but more will probably percolate and implode by then, so we'll do that.
Implode. His tongue is not even in his cheek.
So that'll be, John would be there with you, and then Grant and Joycelyn would be organizing a legislative panel of interesting pundits on the state side of things. That would take you through day 1. And then in the morning, depending upon how many bids we have, we would do the RFP that's due this year for the governance consultant. And then you would have the results of the survey work that came up in your governance committee around board education practices. And you've been holding out the consultant evaluation item. Now that does bring you and I kind of timed this out to about 3:30, and we added 2 things today.
We actually have, in our board evaluation, we narrowed down the scope of who we wanted to have a conversation with. in the evaluation, so
So you think it's
there's,
a little tighter, that item?
I think so,
Okay, so you're feeling more comfortable adding the two that we came up with today?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We hoped, we're,
Okay, so.
we should be good, because we put that into 2 hours, so we should be good.
Okay, so we're good? If it is, we'll lock this down and see you in San Diego.
All righty,
Okay,
that sounds good.
all right.
So those of you that are here for the public or people that do not want to stay for closed session, you are free to leave. Thank you, Maggie.
Before everyone goes.
Yeah, I don't,
Yes.